Okay, we're live on Facebook. Welcome to the Super Empowered Angels podcast. And this afternoon, we have Nina Corcoran as our special guest, and we are so blessed to have her. Thank you for joining us today, Nina.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I am thrilled to listen to your story and what you offer to the community. So, tell me about yourself.
Sure. So I am a certified police officer. I've been a police officer for about a decade. I also just published my first book, which is a young adult book for fiction. And I am also a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. So my book aims to educate young adults on the signs of toxic relationships so that hopefully they don't end up in situations like I did.
Yeah, it's very helpful because I've been there too. So I say that you hold a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing and also Master of Arts in English Literature, and both you went to New Hampshire University.
Yep, Southern New Hampshire University. I did both while working nights and taking classes during the day.
Congratulations! That's a very big accomplishment. So.
Thank you.
So okay, so as an officer, so you're trained to really help people, not to be victimized, right?
Yes, and I would have considered myself extensively trained in domestic violence. I was the only female officer in my department, so I just kind of naturally ended up at those calls a lot of times because I could relate to the female victims. I had a way with being able to talk to them, and I was really good at seeing the situation when it was happening to somebody else. So I would have considered myself an expert. I never would have believed that such a thing could happen to me. But domestic violence doesn't discriminate and it can happen to anyone. And sure enough, it happened to me.
Yes. So what best advice you can share to others to avoid being the victim? At least lessen the chances of being a victim.
So the biggest thing is we need to really talk about what the emotional signs of toxic relationships are. It's really easy for us to say that domestic violence is that no one should put their hands on you, that if somebody is hitting you or hurting you in some way, that that's domestic violence. But most domestic violence relationships don't start that way. And so by the time they get to that physical violence, there's already been so many other things that could have pointed it out to you that we ignore and we don't talk about. And so the signs of emotional abuse, that controlling and the belittling and like all of those types of things are the things that we really need to become familiar with, and we really need to get comfortable talking about so that when those things start happening, we recognize them as early signs of problems, and we remove ourselves after those early signs rather than waiting till it gets to the worst.
And it gets really tricky because when you're in that relationship, you kind of like when you already love that person, and then when you try to break up, and then he would beg, or the begging and the threatening, it will be like in cycle. It's like a figure eight. So the crazy eight, I call it the crazy eight, because would beg, and then if doesn't begging, it doesn't work. You get threatened, and you get hit, you get like smacked. So, and then also once you're in that relationship, it's just like you don't know what to do because you're like, what do you call it? It's like the venom is already in you, and you can't really think straight. So, how would you help someone if they're in that situation now?
It becomes really easy to make excuses and to justify behavior and to pretend like that behavior is not as bad as it really is. And you start to believe it yourself. You start to really believe that you either deserve it or that whatever the reason is somehow your fault. And so you really have to start looking at those situations from a perspective of, look at it from an outsider. Is it really your fault, or is it that you're just trying to take the blame so that it's not his fault? And his or her, an abuser can be both a male or a female, but in my case it was a male, so it's very easy for me to fall into that habit of calling it a male. And like you said, that when you do recognize it and you try to leave, there's often tactics used by the abuser in order to get you to stay. And some of those would be, they change their behavior, they start to beg, they promise you things that, this is never going to happen again, and they try to reel you back in that way. And then some abusers will resort to things, to control tactics, like threatening to hurt themselves, threatening to hurt others, threatening to hurt your children, something like that. And those threats are also domestic violence. That is threatening behavior. And whether or not they're threatening you themselves or your children, pets, what have you, that's still threatening behavior. And so all of those things are tactics used by an abuser to control you and to keep you from leaving. So it's just all part of the game. And so it can be really hard to get out of that cycle, that figure eight, that craziness, because when you're in that situation and someone is standing in front of you making a threat like that, it's impossible to say that you're not going to believe them, or that you're not going to do everything that you can to keep whatever the threat is from happening. And the hard thing is, that's that situation where you need to put it in someone else's hands. If they're making threats against their own lives, that's a situation where, EMTs need to step in and bring them to the hospital, because a suicidal person belongs in a hospital. So if that's the threat that they're making, that's somebody else's problem, and you need to take care of yourself in that situation. And if it's, they're making threats against you or your children, well, then that's a situation for the police, and that's a situation for where you need to get yourself and those children to a safe place and let the police handle it. You have to be able to tell yourself, somebody else needs to handle this because I need to take care of me.
Yes, I so agree with that, because with my situation, I had to have the order of protection for 2 years because I want to be safe, and also my minor children to be safe. So
Exactly.
you have to get the authority involved. That way you are more protected. You can't just have it by yourself. You need to get some help.
And it can be hard to admit that you're at that place where you need to ask for that level of help, or even scary to believe that you need to ask for that level of help. And I got to a place where I was living in fear as well. And that was embarrassing, because here I am, that person that's supposed to be protecting other people from this situation. And I was going home and living in fear that he was going to show up at my house, or, confront me out in public, or something like that, where I was going to be in danger. And it's a real thing, a real fear that isn't something that, I'm never going to tell you that you shouldn't worry about that, like it's not a big deal, because it is a big deal. And if that, you have to do what you need to do to feel safe. And if that's getting a protection order, if that's getting a dog, if it's getting some sort of a security alarm, whatever it is that needs to get you to that place where you can feel safe, you have to take care of you first.
Yes.
And sometimes that is asking for help from authority, friends, whatever it is. But when the time comes, you need to ask for that help.
Yes. If you need to move out and find somewhere else to sleep, then I actually had to go to a family friend and stay there for 3 days until the judge got him out of the house, and then we were able to go back to the house.
I also moved out of my house for about a week to a location that, he didn't know about. It was a friend of a friend of a friend's that I felt safe at, where he wouldn't be able to find me. We hid my car. We took all sorts of measures to make sure that I was safe during that time period, while we did the same thing, tried to figure out how to get him out of the house and make it so that I could go back to be safe. And it can feel like an ordeal. It can feel embarrassing, because you've got all these people like trying to help you do one simple thing, and it should be something you should be able to handle, or whatever you're telling yourself in your head that makes it feel like it's too much. But at the end of the day, it's for your safety, or the safety of your family, your children, whatever. It's it's necessary, and you need to just do whatever is necessary, whether it feels a little bit embarrassing or not.
Yeah. Plus, also, I would rather be like feel embarrassed and be happy at the end than to just suffer with abuse your whole life, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And it can be hard to see that, that ending when it's way far out in who knows how far away. You can't get there without taking those first steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and also it's like it's not really, it's just in your mind. It's embarrassing because once you reach out to other people, they are willing to help and help you get out of it and make sure that you and your children are safe.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, everybody cares more about safety than they do about pride or reputation or whatever else, you want to throw out there. And it's hard to get over that, especially when you want to believe that you're an independent person, that you don't need anybody's help, that you can take care of yourself, whatever it is that you want to say about yourself, or that I wanted to say about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified to ask for help because I didn't want everybody to judge me and think that I was weak or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I was the one that was thinking those things, not my friends, not my family, not the people that offered to help me. It was me. And I had to recognize that.
Yeah, yeah. So, what encouraged you or like got you started in writing your novel?
So it was my stepdaughter so I met the man that I married who became my abuser when I was 11 years old. And at the time we
Mm-hmm.
were just family friends, but it was one of those relationships that developed over time, and it was always toxic. I just didn't know it at the time because no one had ever taught me what toxic relationships were. So um, I am now in a very healthy relationship. I have beautiful stepchildren, and I'm in a much better place. And my family was sitting on the couch one night watching the news, and a story came on about a domestic violence incident where unfortunately the woman ended up being killed by her abuser. And my 11-year-old daughter turned to me and said, "What's domestic violence?" And
Mm-hmm.
my heart stopped. I didn't know how to answer her. I didn't want to have to answer her, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, if I didn't tell her, if I didn't give her a good enough answer, then she wouldn't have known, and she would have been in the same situation I was in and not known the future and not known what to watch out for. So my hope with this book, I had those degrees already in writing, and I've always been a bit of a nerd, and I'd always wanted to sit down and write a book. And so my hope was that if I wrote this book and geared it towards young adults and teens, that they might be able to read this and start recognizing those signs early
Mm-hmm.
enough that they could get out of any sort of relationships without doing too much damage to their self-confidence and their psyche and all of those things, and without
Mm-hmm.
committing 15 years to somebody that was toxic the way that I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for thinking of that and for sharing your knowledge and helping protect especially the young adult and teenagers. And so, how far along are you with the book?
So the book has been out, released
Oh,
for 2 months, come out at the end of June, and I'm actually working on a second book now. So hopefully I'll
really?
have that out by the end of the year. Mhm.
So, what's the title of your book?
The title of my book is He Loves Me Not, by
Oh,
Nina Corcoran, and it's available on Amazon and my website and a couple other places. So please be on the lookout for that.
okay. So, what's your website? We're gonna put it down on the description too.
My website is just my first and last name.com, ninacorcoran.com.
Okay, nice. So, I'm so excited. I should check that one out too. And so before I let you go, what is the like if I if you put yourself in my shoes, and what questions would you ask yourself that I didn't ask you?
So I think one thing that a lot of people always ask when they find out about my story is whether or not it affects how I do my job as a police officer. And in some ways, I don't think it does. I think that I handle calls the same way that I always did because I was always compassionate and I was always looking for, you know, ways to help people and ways to help people out of terrible situations. But I think in some ways, without even trying, it has affected me because I know what these women are going through when they call the police and when they are waiting for help to show up. And I know how terrified they are, even though they're putting on that brave face. And I think that's the biggest thing is I used to show up at these calls and there would be these super strong women standing there and you'd think like these people are amazing and I can't believe that they're putting up with all this bull and they're doing such a great job. And now I know how hard they were working to put that image out to the world. And now I know how relieved they must have felt to have someone like me show up and be on their side, because that's the biggest thing that I didn't realize was how alone I was until I asked for help. So I think that's the way it changes now, is because I know what's going on inside their heads, and it's scary, and you need a friend. You need somebody
Yes,
to be
yes.
on your side in that time. And so don't be afraid to reach out. That really is the most important and best thing you can do, is to find someone to be your ally, to find someone to just be on your side, because there are going to be so many times where you doubt yourself, where you doubt what's happening, where you're just angry and upset and don't know what to do. And that's where that person can really ground you and help you and hold you on that path, because it's also really easy to just say, you know what, it was easier to just be in the relationship. And sometimes you need that person to remind you and say, no, that is not the answer. Like, going back just because this is hard is not going to do you any good either. So find who that's going to be, whether it's the police or a friend or a family member, and hold on to them tight.
Yeah, I can also relate to that, and especially here I'm the only one here in America besides my kids, so I don't even have family to go to. I have friends, but I usually I would call the cops, police officer, and I remember one time that my abuser was on top of my stomach, and he's like twice my weight, and was on top of my stomach and pounding on my chest. And luckily, I had some martial arts training, and I got him off me, and then I ran out to my car, and the road was like, even the driveway was covered with ice because it was like frozen rain, so sleet. So I end up on the ditch in front of my house, and he have the extra key, the remote control of my car. So whenever I lock it, he would unlock it, and I'm like screaming. I was on the phone with the person, and I called 911, but while I'm talking, he keep unlocking, and I can see him walking towards me. And I'm like screaming, "Hurry up!" So yeah, it can be scary, but you just have to do your best to be safe.
Absolutely. And it's a terrible feeling to feel helpless, to feel like there's nothing that you can do in those kind of situations, and to feel like you're just desperate. But that's part of getting your power back, is leaving that relationship and getting away. And it takes time, but it does, you do slowly start to put yourself back together and your life back together, and it's worth it on the other end.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I am so glad. I feel like the minute that relationship ended, I feel like I am a bird that just got loose, and I'm free to go fly anywhere I want and play with other people. So like, be free. And it was so it took me and my daughter took us a while to adjust when we go to the store, because we were so limited. It's like if we go to the store over an hour, we get yelled at. So from like after that relation ended, we still forget. We would go to the store and like, and then we hurry, and I'm like, hey, we don't have to hurry up anymore. We can take our time. So that freedom is so sweet.
It is, and it is hard to get rid of those habits that you develop during that relationship, because those habits were so vital to how you had to live and how you could try to keep the peace and things like that. And so, like, one thing that I still do, and we're talking almost 7 years later, is I still just instantly say I'm sorry no matter what the situation is. I automatically apologize, and my
Mhm.
husband, my current husband, will look at me and say, "What are you apologizing for?" Like, it's not your fault it's raining, or it's not, like, whatever it is. But I'm so used to things being my fault and having to apologize to avoid the fight and things like that.
Mhm.
And these are hard habits to break. And so even when you're consciously, like, very free, like in a great relationship, it's still, those things are still there in the back of your mind, and it's
Mhm.
hard to break them. And it's so nice to remember, like, oh right, it's not my fault it's raining. Like, I
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
control that.
Yeah, and also I want to give some tip to our listener because, uh, for because of that repeated like belittle, put down, it's like you start to believe it, and then you don't have enough confidence to do whatever you love to do. So, what helped me is because I'm also a life coach and I also have a mentor, and my mentor suggested that because of the negative words, the put down imprinted in my subconscious mind, I have to undo that. And how I undo it is I recorded my voice with all the positive things about me, and telling myself that I am loved, I am successful, I am abundant, and all the good things about me. So I listen to that before I fall asleep, and I actually fall asleep with a very relaxing music. I recorded my voice with the music, and it helps me. It kind of like rewire your subconscious mind while you're sleeping. So.
Yeah, that's great. And so for me, because I'm a writer, it was journaling and writing down those similar affirmations, and writing down those
Mhm.
things that I knew, or I should know, I should be proud of, but were hard to remember at the time. And so sometimes I would write down everything that was in my head, and then go through, and, like, things
Mhm.
that I knew weren't true, it was, you'd cross those out, because like, that was that negative voice, and those things weren't real. And that was his voice that I was hearing in the back of my mind. So it was like my way of erasing him from my subconscious.
Yeah, I also journal too. So I have so many journals that I already it's like pages and pages. So I keep buying new ones. It's a very good practice, and also the meditation. I do my meditation in the morning before I start my day, and also before I go to sleep. So.
Yeah, it's just really important to remind yourself of all of the good and all of the positive, because it can be, when you're in that negative environment all the time, it's really easy to sink into that negativity and to believe it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so good to have you here. I love this conversation. So, before we end this, what are important words you want to leave with our listeners, Nina?
Just the biggest thing that I really push is that we shouldn't be afraid to talk about this. Victim is not a bad word, and the victim is not at fault. So the victim shouldn't feel shame in telling her story and sharing with others and getting help. So the more we talk about it, the more we're pulling that shame, and we need to put that shame and anger where it belongs, and that's on the abuser. And so we just need to keep having these conversations, so that people know that
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to come out and share these stories, and be supportive, and we're going to be angry at the right person,
Mm-hmm.
the abuser, and not
Mm-hmm.
the victim.
Mhm. And I want to add to that, to the work on forgiveness. Is forgiveness doesn't mean you're gonna let that person back in your life, but forgiveness is to, it's for your own good, because if you have all that resentment, then you're punishing yourself for the things that you didn't do. So forgive that person, but do not let that him or her back in your life. Just let it go and stay safe as much as possible. Whatever, do your best to be safe, but do not hold grudges. Because
Absolutely.
those people that hurt us, it's because they are hurt too. I know my abuser was so abused as a child, being kicked by a drunk father and a stepdad that like just abused him so bad. So he did not know how to heal himself, and he passed it on to the people that he loves. So um, I I just want to share that, that way you don't suffer, and with the pain that you have in your heart, you have to let it go and just do your best to be happy, have fun. Life is
Exactly.
fun.
Exactly.
All right. So, for those of you who haven't read my book yet, The Beauty of Change, which is number one bestseller on Amazon, it's The Beauty of Change, the fun way for women to turn pain into power and purpose. Go get it now and have fun reading it. And thank you so much, Nina. And I would like to stay connected with you. And good luck with your book. And we'll put all the information down on the description so everybody can access your book.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.